Hello and a very warm welcome to Meghan and Harry News YouTube channel. So while the mainstream media are talking about stupid meaningless things, like Meghan going to a farmer's market with a dog and how this is the worst thing ever, the allegations against Dan Wootton have not been mentioned by any of the toxic tabloids. Now, we see Byline Times have done a piece on this now, which really goes to show the level of the serious criminal complaints against this presenter. I've included a link to the Byline's articles below. Please share this link and share the video to get the word out, because at this time you are not hearing anything from any of the mainstream toxic media. These allegations, although they are trending on Twitter for days and days, are being completely ignored by the toxic media. As Harry said in his Netflix documentary, the silence is deafening, and this silence is coming from an international mainstream media that spends much of its time engaged in a ridiculous smear campaign against Meghan and Harry, an international toxic media that had no problem talking about allegations against BBC presenter Hugh Edwards and Philip Schofield, but for some reason can't seem to talk about Dan Wootton. Dan Wootton, of course, is one of the main presenters who constantly attacks Meghan and Harry. He regularly features Royal Rota reporters like Angela Levin and the like, who talk about nonsense and gossip from anonymous insiders, which are all aimed at creating hatred against them, who interviews the likes of Lady Colin Campbell, who once wrote a book on Meghan and Harry, although she has never met them, another hit job. Dan Wootton writes articles in these newspapers, appears on GB News, sometimes putting out numerous interviews every day, with the sole purpose to talk negatively about Meghan and Harry. And for some reason these allegations are being ignored by the mainstream media, the same mainstream media that are in the middle of an orchestrated campaign against the couple. A media that seems to get much of its stories from leaks from the firm. It seems very clear that Dan Wootton is being protected by that same media. This seems very much to show how all interconnected these media organisations are. I quote a part of the Byline article which talks about them connecting GB News with this evidence and the silence they got in return. It states, Byline Times investigators had already informed executives at GB News of the scope and veracity of allegations against Wootton, but the channel has continued to heavily promote Wootton's programme. During the established period of his activities, Wootton was initially an influential editor for Murdoch's News of the World, before moving, once that paper closed in 2011 after the phone hacking scandal, to the Daily Mail, and then from 2013 to Britain's biggest selling tabloid, The Sun, at which he edited its bizarre showbiz column before becoming an associate editor. His career has given him great power and influence in British media and access to the worlds of television, celebrity and the monarchy, on which it is his highly paid professional role to report. Tonight, a representative for Dan Wootton declined to provide Byline Times with an on-the-record response. It is understood that he strongly denies all allegations of criminality. The representative did not clarify when asked whether Wootton also denies being Martin Branning. Click the link below in the comments and description to find the article from Byline Times. One of Meghan's and Harry's biggest media detractors have been trending on Twitter. There have been some serious allegations made against him. Here we see why is Dan Wootton trending on Twitter. Allegations explored as presenter takes leave of absence. Now, Dan Wootton is but one of many spokes in the wheel of the toxic media that is constantly pushing negative articles, attacking Meghan and Harry. And now it seems the shoe is on the other foot. Is this karma in action? I say this, but this article is the only one I have found that has mentioned it. For the time being, this trending topic on social media is being completely ignored by the media. We know that Dan Wootton hangs around with the family of William and Kate at award ceremonies and was connected with a friend of Kate and William's press secretary. Is it possible that Dan Wootton is protected by the same toxic media that constantly attacks Meghan and Harry? Well, if there is nothing mentioned or reported anywhere in any of the mainstream press, and yet it's trending on social media, we can only assume that this is quite possible. As the toxic media love to latch onto trending topics in social media regardless of whether there is any evidence or not, speculation is what they do all of the time. Harry himself mentioned a sad little man showbiz editor responsible for the Tiara Gate story which May believe is referring to Wootton. It says in Spare, "A sad little man, the newspaper's showbiz editor, was said to be the lead reporter on the story. Why him? Why, of all people, the showbiz guy? Because lately he'd refashioned himself into some sort of quasi-royal correspondent, largely on the strength of his secret relationship with one particularly close friend of Willie's comms secretary, who fed him trivial and mostly fake gossip. He was sure to get everything wrong, as he'd got everything wrong on his last big exclusive, Tiaragate. He was equally sure to cram his story into the paper as fast as possible, because he was likely working in concert with the palace, whose courtiers were determined to get ahead of us and spin the story. Proceed, sad little man, proceed," Harry writes. So that's coming straight from Harry's book Spare, and Harry describes him as a sad little man. And I think we should take note that these people involved in the business of peddling lies and gossip, who are part of an agenda to falsely direct the public to hate people, are sad and pathetic, and their job is to manifest hatred in the public. And even when the chickens come home to roost, we should be careful not to get dragged into their vortex of hatred. As Harry states, these are sad little men and women, and should not be given attention in the first place. In a perfect world, this should be uniformly ignored. Unfortunately, the mechanics of the media system means that these people are forcibly pushed onto the public. So yes, they should be called out for what they said, and once they are shown, should not be entertained no more by the public. Let me know what you think in the comments.